We're going to be diving into a topic that I know a lot of people care about. It has to do with the vaccines, the COVID vaccines. And joining me to unpack the latest on this topic is Nicolas Hulscher. He's an epidemiologist and affiliated with the McCullough Foundation. So thank you for joining us, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I saw a tweet you put out the other day and it grabbed my attention, and I want to pull it up here. You had shared a tweet, and it says multiple legislators, international bodies, and peer-reviewed scientific publications are now declaring that mRNA injections constitute biological or technological weapons of mass destruction. So can you unpack that for us a little bit? I know on the screen there was a bill from Arizona that got put forward, but just start from the beginning and unpack what is this?
Definitely. Yeah, this is a very big development for sure. And this all stems from the fact that we now have 32 studies showing that the COVID-19 mRNA injections resulted in increased mortality and mass death. Over 17 million worldwide, about 800,000 American deaths. So that's the backdrop for these bills. But regarding this particular one, Arizona, the legislature in Arizona did just file this bill classifying the mRNA injections as biological agents and weapons of mass destruction. And, if this bill does end up going through and being signed into law, people who are involved in the manufacturing, distribution of it, as well as administering them, would be subjected to terrorism related charges and face life imprisonment if death occurs. So, this is a very good bill. This is driven by Dr. Joseph Sansone. It's actually named after him. He has been instrumental in these bills, but a similar bill also classifying the mRNA injections as biological weapons of mass destruction was also filed in Minnesota last year. The Alliance of Indigenous Nations declared these as biological weapons as well. Last year, they're recognized by Canada on a nation-to-nation basis. And our peer-reviewed paper we published late last year does demonstrate that these injections do violate the Biological Weapons Convention. So, yeah, these are weapons of mass destruction.
So how then, like, because I've always kind of sort of called it a bioweapon, but like now you're saying the research and all these organizations say like it's there, it is a bioweapon. How did we get to a point where something like this was given to our entire military? Like, it's obviously members of the general public and all across all walks, but our actual military were made to take these, and some of them had to get out of the military and they were demoted, they lost their pay, and the Trump administration fortunately has been allowing them back in. But I mean, you're saying this is a bioweapon, but it was given to America's military. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're trying to figure out how exactly that happened and why, because that act of mandating these mRNA lipid nanoparticle injections on our own military has significantly damaged their health and made them less combat ready. And now many of them are suffering from heart problems and cancers. So, it's very serious. Whoever was responsible for forcing our service members to take these should face very severe penalties. And, we really should get to the bottom who was involved in literally administering a weapon to our military.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's certainly, one aspect that we have to follow is getting accountability for this, like COVID the whole thing, right? Like everything from the virus first being released to the bioweapons being created. The second part that I want to talk to you about is where do we stand as far as research for treatments to try to help people that have been injected with this bioweapon, and sort of reverse some of the damage that's been done?
Yeah, we're well ways away from coming up with, very, completely effective treatments because there's no government funding, no agencies are doing this, but at the McCullough Foundation we are, and we have identified a few things that have shown lots of promise. One is, and Dr. Peter McCullough developed the McCullough protocol based spike detoxification protocol. It's nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, three compounds that have shown in the laboratory to literally directly degrade the spike protein. So that is the protein your body makes in response to the mRNA injections that's highly toxic and lasts in the body for years. So you want to clear that out. That protocol is one, highly promising way to do that. But as well as other key things, simple lifestyle measures actually are perhaps the most effective. Vitamin D, particularly, you want to get as much sunlight as possible. Two studies now show adequate vitamin D levels, when you raise them up from inadequate to adequate, decreases vaccine induced heart damage, makes it less severe, less hospitalizations, and improves long vaccine syndrome. So you're less fatigued. So you got to do that. And you got to eat well. Don't eat hyper processed garbage, and exercise if you can. We have to remember at least 7,000 steps a day decreases risk of all cause mortality, cancer death, all sorts of things that these mRNA shots induce.
Yeah, and speaking of cancer, I want to pull up another tweet of yours. You had said that actually I think that was the wrong link in there. I think I had swapped out another one, but you had actually posted a tweet saying that I think it was dandelion extract or something like that. Was there it is. Dandelion root extracts eliminate human cancer. Can you kind of expand on to what that revelation was?
Yeah, multiple studies were published in the cancer journal Oncotarget actually about 10 years ago. And so now they are just resurfacing. But what they found is extraordinarily promising. So, in two separate studies, one they looked at lemongrass, which is a common plant used frequently in Taiwanese cuisine. And then the other one is dandelion root, which is literally in everyone's backyards. People spray cancer causing glyphosate on them to kill them. These two plants have shown in the test tube in the laboratory. So they put these extracts of these plants on cancer cells, human cancer cells, and it literally wipes out basically all of it, about 95%. So, but then they went and tested them in animal models, in mice. They implanted human tumors in the mice, which is a common way to do it. It's called the xenograft. So they start growing the human tumors, but then when they administered the lemongrass and the dandelion root, it literally halted the tumor growth. The tumor stopped growing, so tumor growth was literally reduced by 95% in the mice that received the lemongrass extracts and or the dandelion root extracts compared to the untreated mice. So very, very promising. Needs human translational research immediately.
Now, I've always been, really interested in some of these alternative treatments for stuff. Do you think something like that? I mean, those studies sound incredible, right? But when we have sort of like the cancer industry being like $1 trillion industry, it's almost like, do they really want people to get better because they stand to lose so much money? And I've always long thought that some of these available remedies have existed but sort of just been suppressed because of the flow of money that sort of corrupted the industry. So like what's your, I guess, you're in that industry, you're one of the good doctors fighting to get real treatments out there, but do you see like roadblocks in really getting patients access to treatments that actually work?
I'm seeing lots of roadblocks, particularly when it comes to ivermectin and fenbendazole. That's another very promising one, been linked to complete remissions in a few case reports. But yeah, many of these oncology clinics, particularly if your child has cancer, they're gonna basically report you to CPS, Child Protective Services, if you want to go the alternative route. So yeah, lots of barriers are still in place, which is a very dangerous situation because we do know, like you mentioned, the cancer industry, I call it the chemo cartel, does not want cheap, unpatentable treatments to be helping cancer patients. They just want to be able to administer very expensive and treatments that don't actually solve the problem in a timely fashion. And so, compared, thousands and thousands of dollars of chemo over years, or, a cheap backyard plant, over a span of a few months. I don't know. I mean, clearly, they would rather administer the subscription service of thousands of dollars over years.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but shout out to you for doing the good work and still getting this information out there. I want to move on to another topic that you had tweeted about here. If we could put the birth control tweet up there on the screen, this really grabbed my attention because you said Pfizer gave over 13,000 women disabling brain tumors with their birth control injections. So obviously there's a study there. We'll have you talk about that, but I really wanted you to unpack this because so many schools all across the country are really pushing birth control as part of their, health classes. But these kinds of things are never talked about. So please unpack this for us and just sort of some of the all the other dangers of modern day birth control that these young girls are being encouraged to take.
Yeah, birth control, synthetic hormone therapy of any form is not going to be healthy for the human body. And so all of them will present risks with zero benefit other than, not getting pregnant, not getting an unwanted pregnancy. But regardless, these Depo-Provera shots developed by Pfizer, this is a birth control injection that lasts for 3 months. It is a synthetic hormone. I think it's progestin or a form of it that does suppress the ability to get pregnant for that long period of time. But a recent study did just come out with over 60 million people in it and found in those who received these Depo-Provera shots, they face about a 240% increased risk of meningiomas, which are literally these disabling brain tumors. Sometimes they're cancerous, sometimes they're benign, but it doesn't matter. When you have a mass growing in your brain, that can cause paralysis, pain, terrible headaches, and you'll need brain surgery. So very serious. That translates to that risk profile when extrapolated to 25% of the population who takes 25% of women in the US take Depo-Provera, have taken these injections. And so that translates to about 13,000 women having developed these disabling brain tumors. And so, yeah, very bad. Pfizer is now facing a tidal wave of lawsuits.
Now, I've heard also that a lot of the birth controls impact fertility as well. Like you temporarily, you take it because you don't want pregnancies, but then I heard that, once you do want to have a child, it actually impacts the fertility. So, can you speak about any studies or anything that may or just weigh in on that in general?
Yeah, so basically, what can happen is when women take birth control for extended periods of time, say years upon years on end, 5, 10 years, in some circumstances, it can be very hard to recover your fertility after suppressing it for that long. And some people, it doesn't come back. I don't know the exact rates of that, but in most people, it should at least recover by, some degree, fortunately. But regardless, it's not worth the risks of potentially irreversible fertility harms, as well as these other risks of, other things such as bone loss. That's not talked about much, all sorts of horrible things as well, but particularly those brain tumors. That's bad, of course, as well. And then there's other risks that would be pages long. But yeah, regardless, if you, I would not recommend any woman to take this for if they want the most optimal health possible.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers. It's just really, really important because the schools are just pumping this stuff on the kids and these health classes. And I feel like this should be a part of that conversation if they're going to promote it to these kids. The other thing being promoted to kids is candy, right? The candy. Every time you go into a supermarket or a gas station, you see all those candy bars there, and the kids are asking their parents, oh, can I get this candy bar? Well, now a study came out. We're going to pull up another tweet from you. 60% of childhood candies contain dangerous levels of arsenic. Sweet tarts, Snickers, Skittles, Kit Kat, Nerds, Sour Patch Kids, Twizzlers, Jolly Ranchers, Trolley, Tootsie Roll among the worst offenders. All right, unpack this for us. How was this allowed to happen? If there's government regulation on the levels of arsenic and things like a bottle of water, how are these levels allowed to enter into kid candy bars?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, the thing is that they're not, but nobody was testing them. And thankfully, the Florida Department of Health decided to take all of the popular candies that children eat. And, little did they know, 60% of them contain dangerous levels of arsenic, which is highly carcinogenic and deadly in high amounts. And so basically, what they found was, yeah, Snickers, Kit Kats, Tootsie Rolls, Skittles. You can only eat, according to their table that they showed, you can only eat about 100 pieces of Nerds each year. A child can before developing these risks of cancers. We have to remember there's like 8,000 Nerds in one box. So if you only eat 80 to stay under the limit, I mean, they're consuming a large amount of arsenic. So our kids may have been getting poisoned for the past many decades with these heavy metals. That's very worrisome. And we also have to remember that arsenic was literally coined the term in the medieval times, the king of all poisons, because it was used to murder other people and it has no taste or smell. And so, we do not want the king of poisons in a majority of childhood candies.
So, what is the purpose of putting arsenic in the candy in the first place? Like, why? Like, is there any purpose to why you would put even maybe a tiny amount? Like,
No, no, all any amount of arsenic is highly poisonous and causes all sorts of cancers in the body. And if you're exposed to a very high amount in a short period of time, you will die. So yeah, it's very bad. No reason to be in there, but how it's introduced is actually through the manufacturing process. Sometimes the metals on these machines get into it. Sometimes the ingredients they use are very low quality ingredients, and they have sugar. Some are derived from fruit, non-organic fruits grown in garbage soil, and then it all mounts up in these highly toxic, highly processed candies. And so even small amounts in each of these ingredients begin to add up, and then you get these high levels of arsenic.
so is that something, I guess, like going forward, have they recalled any of these candy bars, or what is the government doing in order to mitigate this?
It appears, based on what I've seen recently, they haven't recalled any of these, and I haven't heard any word from the federal government. Actually, I think the federal government's trying to almost debunk the Florida findings and say how the FDA's detections didn't find excess arsenic. So I don't know. It appears a lot. Big food is pissed off by these findings for sure, and we're going to continue to expose them. Hopefully, Florida does some more testing on other products so we can see what else is in these other products, what other heavy metals are in there. Because when we have our little children consuming these highly toxic elements,
Mhm.
that we really have to be concerned. Like that can trigger childhood cancer if they're eating a bunch of Nerds now all the time. Again, very serious.
Yeah, for sure. And just final question before we let you go. Just the Trump administration has sort of created its MAHA movement, right? Make America Healthy Again. What is your reaction to Secretary Kennedy and sort of the work that they've been doing? Just your feedback overall on sort of the MAHA movement.
Yeah, I'm happy and dissatisfied at the same time. And so I'm happy where, they have done a few great things. They have canceled the mRNA injection contracts last year that were undergoing under BARDA. So the development of mRNA for respiratory pathogens was at least limited by some degree. And we saw recently the shrinking of the childhood vaccination schedule went from about 82 doses down to about 30 something doses by age 18. So now, yeah, we did shrink the childhood vaccine load by 50 doses. But I'm not happy with certain things, such as how 6-month-old babies are still getting the mRNA shots. They're still allowed to be administered to them, as well as the pregnant women, despite all of these absolutely catastrophic risks that we are uncovering. And so clearly, there are still pharmaceutical interests embedded by some degree in the Make America Healthy Again movement. But we are seeing some positive headways.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on the show today. You've been a fountain of knowledge, and thank you, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, we are just going to jump right in. That was actually such great information, and I hope you guys all took something from that and share that with your friends, because a lot of this stuff, whether you have family members struggling with cancer, whether you have family members on birth control, I mean, this kind of information and alternative research and treatments is so beneficial. So please, please, please encourage your friends and family to watch that segment and to listen and follow professionals like Nick.